Good morning, and welcome back to another episode of I Must Ask You a Question. How's your real estate market? And today I'm here with Eric Ravenscroft out in Phoenix, Arizona. How are you doing, man?
I'm good. How are you?
Hey, I'm good, man. It's Friday, but you know what that means in the real estate world, right? It's just
We
another
got to
day.
work.
It's just another regular day, right?
Yep.
And so, no, it's great, man. I have a few appointments today, so I'm excited. But I wanted to just kind of jump in with things and just kind of see what's going on in your real estate market out there in Phoenix.
Yeah. So we're kind of in an interesting market right now where, 2 months ago, 3 months ago, we were the strongest buyers market that we saw in like 14 years. Fast forward to now, only a few months, that is pretty much gone. It's no longer here. So everything is pretty much shifting to sellers. Being a seller's market, the demand here is pretty vast. Like a ton of investors. Then you have the snowbirds that are coming from the colder climates, and then you have the mix of buyers who are trying to get in front of the competition, like you would have there,
Yeah.
of the spring and summer market. So it's been an interesting shift, even just over the last few weeks.
Yeah. And so you're saying you're seeing more of like a seller's market now?
Yeah, yeah. Where
Why do you think?
before,
Yeah.
oh, go ahead.
I was gonna say, why do you think that it was like you said, it's like a quick shift. It was buyer's market, and then all of a sudden it just turned to flip, and now it's more leaning towards the sellers. What do you
Yeah,
think is impacting that?
there's a few reasons. So one, I think from like the investor standpoint, it's beginning of the year. Most of the investors, they've already kind of tapped out the reserves for, in this case, say 2024 end of the year. So it's
Yeah.
a new year. A lot of people looking at what's coming this year. Everyone thinks they have a crystal ball when it comes to rates. We don't, but those that maybe think, okay, rates are gonna kind of stay the same, or once rates drop, there's going to be a big influx in demand. So let's get in front of it. We always do bump up this time of the year, especially because of snowbirds, right? People are looking
Mhm.
at what rents are here from a short-term standpoint. And, a lot of times it makes more sense. Well, let's just buy something where our mortgage is, $2,500 to $3,000 a month versus paying 8 grand a month
Yeah.
for, a property. And like you have there, all the new builds. Builders did not drop any incentives here from year end to now. So that's also kind of increased demand where we have a few builders here, uh, a mix between like average quality builders to even to the high end builders that are still offering 3.99% 30-year fixed builder paid rates. So, buyers, they're looking at that like, well, I can't pass that up. But that supply is starting to shrink. So now it's kind of, fuel demand and had kind of the opposite effect.
Yeah, and that's crazy because I had a builder stop by here the other day at our office and dropping off some flyers and materials. And when when sales reps of builders start dropping by offices, that
Yeah.
means they need to get rid of inventory, right?
Oh yeah.
And she
Yep.
brought a flyer saying, "Hey, we just moved into this neighborhood, out here down the street in Josephine, and their buy down I think was 3.25 for the first year."
Jeez.
And I was like, geez, I was like, holy, I was like 3.25 for the first year. And then obviously it goes up a percent for the next year. It's either 3.25 or 3.75. But regardless, I mean, I was like, that's insane.
Yeah. I
Right.
mean, we haven't seen that in what, 4 years
Yeah,
now?
it's
Yeah.
crazy. And what's even crazier is you obviously know with new construction, right? The first year, their property taxes are going to be super low.
Yep.
So at the end of the day, some of these buyers are going to have tremendous savings that first year until really the property taxes go up the second year. And then obviously the rate goes up. But at the end of the day, they're still saving a ton of money in the very beginning
Yeah.
on new
And
construction.
And with the new construction too, like we have different things here that you would have, but our big things are roof and HVAC. I mean, HVAC is obviously going to be the same there and here. We need it. But yeah, you look at that, it's like, okay, you're not gonna have to replace that for 20 years. You're not gonna have to replace the roof for 25, 30 years. So, when you look at all those things, like as long as the location makes sense, it's really hard for a buyer to turn it down, or even an investor, right? If they're looking for a long-term rental, it's like they're still giving those rates, to investors and those incentives. So it turns the situation for an investor to all right, I can't positively cash flow on a resale, but I can easily on a new construction home.
Yeah. So do a lot of your builders out there allow investors to buy?
Right now, yeah, I think
Yeah.
in the last 2 weeks, I've seen only two shift to say no more investors.
Yeah.
But yeah, for the last 3 months prior, everyone was allowing investors.
Yeah, and that's the same here. I mean, there's obviously in the past it was always no, we don't sell to investors, we don't sell to investors, and then now with inventory higher in new construction, they're like, we welcome all the investors that can
Take
come and buy
anything,
this
yeah.
stuff. They don't care
Exactly.
anymore, and so awesome. So, what is your average sales price out there, whether it's pre-existing or new construction?
It's right around that 5 mark.
Okay.
It can hover, between high fours, low fives, but typically it's in that at that price point. I think we're very similar to your market as well, where we can go 30 minutes away and find a brand new home or a resale home in the mid to high threes. But then we're also seeing, like, you have the $2 million, $3 million home half hour away as well. So it is a pretty diverse mix.
Yeah, yeah. So what advice are if there's a buyer or seller right now looking at this video, what would be some advice that you're giving to them, whether it's on the buying side or the selling side?
Yeah, I mean, for buyers, we always say this too. Like, it always seems like every agent says it's a great time to buy. My stance is like it's a great time for you to buy, and it
Yeah,
makes sense financially. And I feel like that's a lot. The big piece of what most buyers don't do, like, they aren't assessing their finances. They're not creating not a full scale financial plan. My background's actually
mhm,
in financial planning, so of course
okay,
I'm going to preach that of
yeah,
have a plan, have a budget, don't overextend. Making sure you're filling your other buckets and just make sure it makes sense. So that's one big thing for buyers is, and have a plan. Does it make sense? And then looking at what the future will hold. We know home prices are going to go up. We know rates will eventually come down. So even though it seems high now, whether rate or price, what's it going to look like in 2 years, 5 years, 10 years? And overall, what are your big term goals? So
yeah,
that is kind of the big thing for buyers. For sellers, for me, especially since Arizona, we are such a homeowner friendly state,
mhm,
versus others being more tenant friendly. I'm always presenting the option to sellers. Let's look at turning this into a rental. Turn it into a rental and then potentially leverage that to then buy something else. There's not a lot of people that understand, one, how much you can get in rent, the tax benefits, and having someone else pay your mortgage while you bank on appreciation and all the other benefits. So that's
yeah,
kind of the one thing I tell sellers, especially if they've had the property for even 3 years, 5 years, is, hey, let's look at this first. Then it's, if you're thinking about selling, do you, again, going with a plan, do you have a plan for what you're going to do with the money? Is that trading up to a different home? Is that maybe using the proceeds to invest in other opportunities? So many times I see people that sell just to sell,
yeah,
and then I ask them a year later, like, oh, did you end up buying a new home? Oh no, that money, that $200,000 that we netted, is still sitting in the bank.
yeah,
So that's the big thing with sellers is, yeah, it is turning into a seller's market, but do you need to sell? Why would you sell? Don't give in to the rush and what everyone else is doing, the bright and shiny chase. So those are kind of the biggest two approaches, which most of the time for me, I'm a little bit different than what most agents might say. But for my clients, buyers, sellers, that's kind of my take right now.
yeah. And we're kind of alike in that because, and that's what I think separates us from being a transactional type agent versus a relationship is, hey guys, does it really make sense for you to sell and then buy another one? Does it really make sense for you to do XYZ, right? A lot of people are, out there using all the cliches of, um, marry the house and date the rate or whatever that crap that they say, right, on social media. And it, one, I think it's cheesy, but two, okay, cool, but does it really make sense? Because a lot of times it doesn't make financial sense. And a lot of even people who just recently bought homes a few years ago, yes, they may have been rushed to buy it, but because so, if they sell it today, doesn't make sense. No, I don't understand why people think that breaking even makes sense. It
Yep.
does if you have a different need and the reason you need to move. Is it because you relocating jobs and you got to get closer? Is it because your family's growing? Is it shrinking? You're becoming an empty nester. Was there a tragic event where this is just too much of a house? Then yes, breaking even may make sense because your need outweighs that financial, what could have been. But it's sometimes it doesn't matter, right? It's like,
Yeah.
okay, can you turn this into a property that cash flows to help pay for your next house? Then let's look at that option, right? And a lot of agents, they just focus on, let's just sell right now or let's just help you buy. They don't think of the broad spectrum, and they should start thinking that way because that's what really looks out for the client's best interest.
Yeah.
It's not necessarily just about buying and selling. Let's come up with that strategy and say which part makes sense to help your need of the reason you need to sell or buy. So
Yeah. And I
what,
always look at it this way, like,
yeah,
asking clients, have you ever, sold a property and then looked back 5 years or 10 years later, be like, gosh, we're so glad we sold that property. No, it's the opposite of why didn't we hang on to that? So I think that's important. It's with anything, like letting go of, like, if you're selling a stock, if you're selling a house, is what's that future value going to be? And are you going to be looking back and be like,
yeah,
why didn't we try to make that work? Why didn't we explore alternative,
yeah,
solutions to keep that?
yeah.
So, I mean, that's kind of what I try to preach as much as possible.
It's crazy that you brought that up because this morning I have a listing appointment near an old neighborhood my wife and I used to live in, and before school, my son was with me and he's 10, and we're like, "Hey, do you remember this house? This is the first house that you grew up in. You were born in it, 2 years." And he's like, "No." And then I kind of told him, I was like, "Look, we first bought this house, in 2012 for like $90,000." And I said, we sold it for 166. And he's like, "Oh, wow." And I was like, but imagine if we would have kept that house today, we would have been able to sell it for 350,000.
Yep.
Now, yes, it's 12 years, 13 years later, but still, and me and my wife are like, dang, we should have held on to it. But
Yeah.
see, our need to get into a better school district so that my kids can grow through was stronger than let's hold on to this property. We
Sure.
needed to sell it, take the money to buy the next house. And that's what a strategy I tell a lot of first time home buyers is, I'm like, look, buy this smaller house. Yes, it's not your dream house, but it never is in the very beginning
No.
because you're always going to want something nicer or bigger or a different area. Start smaller, maybe turn it into an investment property, or wait until it's the right time to take that equity, use that equity to buy the next house, and then keep going, right? I have a client that we helped do this 7 times. They're my 7 peak client. They're my only client and I've been in full time for 10 years. And they used that strategy. They bought a house, they sold it, they used that equity to buy the next one. And then they bought the next one with that equity and sold it. And so it was just, now they're in their nice dream home, right? And people are like, "Well, I don't want to move that many times." Well, that's fine, but you're always not going to want something in the house anyways, and you're going to always want something better. So
Yeah. There's life changes, like the house that I'm in right now. Where I'm at now was our single car garage, and we had to convert it to my office because we needed more space. Obviously, we have another kid on the way. So now it's like, okay, this house that we thought we would grow into only, 3 years ago is now too small,
yep,
and we need something bigger. So it's like, looking at it that lens of, not to say like you always want something better and bigger, but it's just being flexible for life changes, or things that come up.
yeah, definitely. So let me ask you about Phoenix. What makes Phoenix so attractive? Do you think the area that you serve?
Yeah, so a lot of things. Like, I came from Southern California. That's where I'm originally from. I spent time in Oregon. So obviously the sunshine, especially right now, a lot of the people that are here, they're from colder climates. It does get hot, like it does there. You do kind of just adapt to it. I always say it is our winter, but I'd rather take, the sunshine over, what, negative or 0 degrees when it's snowing. So
Mhm.
obviously that is a big plus, is the weather. The other thing too, which a lot of people don't know, is our economy. So we have a lot of different things that make us attractive. One is we have a flat state income tax. Obviously, we can't compete with you all in Texas, but it's 2.5% across the board. So it's still really low. But the other thing that's kind of combats that and makes it attractive is our property taxes are low. So income tax, while we do have it, it's low. Property taxes will range anywhere from 0.50 to 0.75%. So well below 1%. And then a lot of the infrastructure and new businesses coming here. So just right now on the board, we have about $100 billion in investments for new corporations, new headquarters, businesses moving here. So obviously that's bringing more jobs. It's doing a huge boost to the economy. So those are kind of some keys. And then, affordability. Like you have a ton of people moving from California, right? I think our last number was about 70% of all of our inflow is from California.
Yep.
So I'm big on doing cost comparison analysis, just comparing your cost, whether it's taxes, housing, everyday expenses, and showing how far that money can go. So when we do that, and I do that in California, they look at it as like, wow, I'm only 5 hours away from a drive. I could fly in an hour and a half to see friends and family. They work remotely or they can find a job because it's such a strong job market, low unemployment. They have the option to buy a new build where maybe in California they didn't. They can get a house with a pool, for 500,000, where in California, well over, $1 million. So we have a lot of the things that you would find in big cities that drives in a lot of people pretty much every day.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I get it. So, real quick before we wrap up, what is your favorite thing to do in Arizona and Phoenix?
It's golf. I mean, we kind of are like one of the top places for golf in the country. So definitely try to get out as much as possible. As though, I mean, 5 hours on the golf course as a real estate agent is sometimes a hard task to complete. But yeah, anytime I can get outside,
Yeah.
especially today it's going to be 72 degrees, so great weather. And yeah.
So, what do you usually shoot when you're golfing? What are you?
If I'm consistent, going out every week or every other week, I'll be in the high 80s. Otherwise, we're in that 90 range for sure.
Gotcha. Yeah, I'm not a big golfer. I've only been a couple of times, and when I do go, I have to take like 40 balls.
Oh yeah.
Plus, and I'm losing them by like the 8th hole, and then I just give up. I'm like, guys, I'll just smoke my cigar. I'm good.
if you've got courses with water, your balls are just a magnet to that water, right?
Yeah.
And then if it's any desert landscaping or anything, it's going elsewhere.
So if somebody is visiting for the first time, what are maybe one or two things that it is an absolute must that they either need to go eat or they need to go visit and see?
Oof. That's a good question. I mean, a lot of people come here to go to the Grand Canyon. It is not, like, oh, I'm going to go there for a half hour and come back. It's a trek from Phoenix.
Yeah.
Cool thing to see, but definitely, plan for that. I'd say just with the timing, like if someone's coming right now or in springtime, going to a spring training game is an awesome, experience. Other things would be we have a lot of kind of, think of them like micro downtowns. So it's not like a big downtown like it would be, Dallas or downtown Phoenix. We have a lot of small downtowns within each city.
Yeah.
So it's walkable. You have a ton of either local shops, local dining options. So that's kind of, if someone's like, oh, I really like Litchfield Park, I really like Gilbert, I really like these different areas, each area would have its own little downtown to see, and you kind of get a feel for that, that neighborhood, that community. So yeah, that's kind of what I would say is check those out. And if you're a big hiker, tons of really cool hikes. If you're into the lake life, we have actually a big lake as well. So it just depends on what everyone's looking for.
Yeah.
But to summarize a few things, that's what I would say.
Yeah. So what's your favorite restaurant? Your go-to?
Right now, just with convenience with kids, We have a little taco shop just down the street in our little mini downtown. It's called Rosie's. We go there probably, once a week.
Yeah.
So that's what I would say is kind of my go-to. And then we just got a donut shop, which my son is obsessed with donuts. So I'd throw in the donut reference there as well.
Oh yeah, my I think most kids want donuts. My kids are every day, can we go get donuts? I'm like, no.
Yep.
I'm like, okay, guess what? I'll make you a bet. If you get good notes, right, you're not acting up all week, we'll go on Friday. That is when I take him to donuts. So
There you
he got
go.
donuts. He's been doing great in the school. He's like, I haven't got bad notes all year. I'm like, you know what? All right, we'll go to donuts today. And so I took him to donuts
There you
uh,
go.
and stuff. So awesome, man. So last question for everybody out there: how long have you been in real estate, and how did you get started into real estate, and why? Because you said you had a financial planning background.
Yeah. So my background's a little interesting. So I started in financial planning in 2007. Obviously, we all know what happened in 2008. So I started in real estate shortly after that in 2009 because most clients had more trust in housing than they did the stock market at that time. So it was more kind of trying to blend the two from financial planning and real estate and merging them, bridging that gap because as you know, there's a big gap between the two. So that was in California. And then I moved to Oregon. And then when I moved here to Phoenix, which now is coming up on 9 years, that's when I left the financial planning world corporation, working for a corporation and started in real estate full time here in Phoenix to be able to offer both services to clients.
Cool. Cool. Awesome, man. If
Yeah.
anybody wants to get a hold of you, whether they have questions about Phoenix or if they're looking to buy or sell over there, what's the best way that they can get a hold of you?
Really, I mean, my cell phone, email, on Instagram, LinkedIn, or Facebook. I'd say LinkedIn and Instagram are probably my most, heavily used platforms. But yeah, all those options could be the way to get a hold of me.
Cool. Awesome. Well, there you go, everybody. Thank you for tuning in this Friday. If you have questions about the greater Phoenix area, definitely reach out to Eric. Great guy, great agent. He'll definitely take care of you. And thank you, Eric, for taking time out of your morning today to jump on today. And it was fun, and I appreciate it, man.
Absolutely. Thank you.
All right.